Okay, here we are on section 1-2. So this deals with travel expenses, which obviously is going to be a discretionary expense. But what they're really dealing with in this section is frequency, and that just means how often something happens. Okay, so we've got cumulative frequency, relative frequency. We could do a project where we are actually using Excel or Google Sheets and doing a spreadsheet and figuring that out. We'll see if that comes to fruition or not. All right, so let's go to your next slide. And think about some things. What are some costs that are involved in traveling? So our family likes to travel quite a bit. So think about some of those things. You have, depending on where you're going, you got airfare, right? Or car transportation, gas. You've got hotel. You've got food. You've got whatever entertainment you're doing, right? If you're going to Disneyland or you're going to another country or whatever you're doing, you've got souvenirs, right? You've got all those things. Depending on if you're going to another country or not, you've got a passport, right? Which is not free. You got to pay for that too. Okay, so let's go down to example 1. How many of the trips listed in the summer travel table, which was in our 1-1, were less than 1,000 miles? So if you think about some of the examples we looked at in 1-1, we were only looking at data sets that maybe had 10 numbers in them. 6, we did the cups of coffee. There were 6 people, right? Well, when you are dealing with most information out there, you're dealing with sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands, sometimes millions of data sets. So it's not feasible to list those number by number. So a lot of times what they're going to do is they're going to put them in sections. So we have, between 50 miles and 250 miles, between 250 and 500 miles, between 500 and 1,000 miles, or more than 1,000 miles. So let's talk about these little symbols here, what they mean. And let's remember from IM1. So if we've got a less than, if we've got that sign underneath, it means less than or equal to, right? If it's just less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. If there's no sign underneath, it means less than that number or greater than. Okay? Okay. So, let's go back to the question. How many of the trips listed in the summer travel table here, and they put them in their little categories, were less than 1,000 miles? Okay? So here, everything in this last category here is going to be greater than 1,000 miles. Greater than 1,000 miles. So in order to find the total number of trips that were taken, we're just going to add these 3 together. Okay? So let's see, what do we have there? We've got, add those back 3 numbers up. Those are easy. And then we've got 0, 5, 7, and 6 is 18, 14, 15, 7, 10, 11, and 1. So total for all those 3 is 617,580,000 trips. Much easier. You can't even imagine if we had to list all of those out. And why do we need to? We just need to put them in their categories where we can kind of group them together by what they are. Okay? All right. So let's go back and look at our table again. So less than 500 miles. So everything in these 2 categories here would be less than 500 miles, right? We've got things that are trips that are between 50 and 250, and things that are between 250 and less than 500. So now we're just going to add those 2 amounts together. So we've got 72 to 70. So how many trips less than 500 miles in length were taken? 5, 1, 12. Oops. 460 million. So total, that'll give us 0, 13, 7, 4, 8, 5. So really in this section, we're learning how to read these charts, okay? Which actually is a more useful tool than you'll realize when you're older. Okay, so example 2, the flight travel website reported that the following airfare booking expenses for the week of July 4th. What proportion of the tickets, so here's a word we need to think about, what proportion of the tickets sold had a cost greater than or equal to 400. So let's look at our first requirement here. Greater than or equal to 400, and, so that's a big important word, and less than or equal to 499. So let's deal with the first one. Greater than or equal to 400. So everything that's greater than or equal to 400. So that's going to be all of these sections here. Right? Right? You can see down here there were 1,434 total bookings. And we're looking at the range in between 700 and 899.99. So we're looking at these two sections right here. So what these two numbers represent out here are the actual proportion, the percentage of the time that happened. So these are in decimal form. In order to write them in percent form, we just need to scoot our percentages, or sorry, our decimal over 2 places. So this will be 9.5%, and this will be 5.6%, right? So the nice thing is they've already done that calculation for you, but if we were to go back and do our, figure it out ourselves, we have 136 and 80 percentages they already give me. I have 9.5% and 5.6%, so it should be a total of 15.1%. Okay, so now we're looking at what percent of the total number of bookings fall within the range of 700 to 899.99. So let's think about how we figure out a percent, and we'll talk about this in class. But remember, a percent is just like a fraction. It's a part of the whole. So the first thing we need to know is how many total bookings were there in this time period. So if we go back and look, so that's information that we need, and that's going to be our whole. There were 1,434 total bookings there. So we would have 136 plus 80. Okay? So that would give us 216 over 1,434. So we're going to check that in class. But if I add up the two, okay? And that's it for your notes. Thanks.